Welcome to this week's Wellness Wednesday. And this week I wanted to do a session on how to get the most out of therapeutic sessions. Whether you're working with a practitioner here at the Optimum Health Clinic, or indeed you're working with practitioners elsewhere. Thought this would be a sort of useful checklist of how to prepare for sessions, how to engage in being in sessions, and also how to kind of get the most out of time after and between sessions. And I should do a caveat that not all practitioners might agree with this. This is sort of how we at Optimum Health Clinic tend to think about sessions. It's not a complete list. It's more of a kind of bit of a brain dump of just some things that I think can often be quite important. So the first thing is, in anticipation of sessions, one of the things that often happens is we get lots of questions, lots of things. Oh, I must remember to tell this to my practitioner. I always really encourage people to keep notes, to write things down. Often what happens when people get into sessions is it's like suddenly the brain goes, people forget things, people get in the moment, and then they end up sort of frustrated about, I've got to remember that was the thing I was going to ask you. With ongoing patients that I work with who tend to have a lot of questions, I will encourage them to send an email, a kind of email summary and questions they've got before appointments. That's not necessary for everyone. It doesn't even work for everyone, but for some people, it helps them organize their thinking. And it also helps me have a checklist of things that we're going to go through. We may not answer all of those questions in a session, but at least gives me a sense of where they are. So firstly, just take the time to prepare. Write down questions, write down things you think are important to remember. The second thing, and this is going to sound super obvious, but I still think it's important to say. Make sure if you're traveling in to see someone, make sure you arrive with plenty of time. If you're traveling in London, particularly if you're using public transport, even if you're not using public transport, almost particularly if you're not using public transport and you're on the roads, just making sure you arrive with time, that you don't arrive kind of flustered and kind of stressed, and then it's almost like it's hard to hear for the first 20 minutes because you're just trying to kind of land and kind of gather yourself. If you're doing sessions from home, you're doing stuff on Skype, things like making sure that whatever you're doing before, you stop doing it 10, 15, 20 minutes before a session, or if you have low energy, resting or doing meditating before a session. It's just kind of ensuring that you're in the best possible state that you can be for the hour that you've got. That doesn't mean, not in any way do I mean that you need to put on a performance. It's the opposite. You need to be as relaxed as possible, to be as real as possible, that you're not, the more wired we get, the more armored and protected we tend to get. And particularly on the psychology side, part of the work is relaxing some of that. And it's easier to engage therapeutically if we're in a kind of grounded, calm state. And if you're not, that's fine. It might be that part of the process of doing therapeutic work is quite unsettling and overwhelming, and it's fine to bring that. But if there are things that you can do to help support and prepare yourself, then certainly do those things. Once in sessions, people can come in with, and I've done this when I've been on the other side of the equation. People can come in with so many questions and so many things they want answered and figured out that we can end up trying to control the agenda of the session. It's like we're so panicked trying to get all the questions answered, or trying to kind of give lots of details. And I think the more that you can listen to the practitioner and let them drive the agenda, the better. I certainly know when I'm working with people, particularly new patients, I have a lot of things that I know that I want to ask. And if answers, and I will tell people I think answers are overly detailed. Some practitioners are too polite to do that. But it's, you need the things that you need, but you don't need the things that you don't need. Now, you don't always know which those are, but when people come in and they really want to sort of control the direction of the conversation, it just can take a lot of time. And then when time is limited, you can spend more time than you need on getting certain information, which then leaves less time to then progress and look at moving things forward. So listening and kind of surrendering to the direction of the practitioner, I think, is important. But I'm also going to say a contrary point to that is also being willing to be honest and to speak out. And if you feel that the practitioner is going in a direction that doesn't feel right, it also being okay to say that. Like, a big part of this work that I find as a practitioner is the more honest and the more vulnerable the client is, the more helpful information you tend to get. Sometimes people can feel shame around things, or they can feel embarrassed around things, they can feel inner critic around things, and they don't share that, or they kind of make it sound better than it is because it feels awkward or embarrassing. But, and you know, as a practitioner, you get better at kind of sniffing out when people are giving you kind of half of the picture, but sometimes you don't, and sometimes you end up with half the information, or 2-3 sessions down the line someone tells you something that would have been really helpful information at the start. So the braver you can be and the more willing you can be to share the truth of your experience, the more you're helping the practitioner. And sometimes people will say things like, you know, that they're projecting their own discomfort onto the practitioner and saying, oh, I don't want to tell you this because it will be too overwhelming for you, or it will be too distressing for you to hear it. If your practitioner can't handle it, they shouldn't be a practitioner at the end of the day. There shouldn't be anything that you feel that you can't share or you can't say. And it's up to practitioners to make sure that they're resilient enough and they have their own boundaries and they know their own limits to be able to hold a safe and supportive space. And, you know, sometimes what happens is it takes someone a whole session or a few sessions to build trust. Then right at the end, you get the bit that if you'd had it at the start would have helped form and shape things differently. So yeah, just sort of the more honest, the more open that you can be, the better. So it's sort of a dual thing here. It's being willing to listen and being willing to kind of really follow the track and the path the practitioner is taking, but also being a very active participant in that process and being brave enough and vulnerable enough and honest enough to share what needs to be shared. Then the other side of that is also being willing to hear what's difficult to hear. And sometimes as practitioners, we find ourselves in situations where we're having to kind of say truths to people that are uncomfortable. You know, for example, someone's got a major achiever pattern, let's say, and it's just really clear that their health is not going to progress unless they take a break from work, and their whole identity is tied into that, and that's a really sensitive area. Or someone's in what appears to be a very destructive relationship, and of course it's never the role of a practitioner to tell someone to leave a relationship, but it might be asking provocative, challenging questions around that. And as a client, it's like, it can be hard to hear those things, but the more we're willing to listen and be kind of brave in seeing what's going on. I'm sure you get a flavor if you follow my content that I'm a strong believer in being real and being truthful. And sometimes that's tricky and challenging, and that takes trust in the therapeutic relationship to do that. But, you know, there are times people hold things back, and that information would have been really helpful earlier in the process. And the braver you can be, the better. So then after, when kind of between sessions, doing homework is critical. I pretty much always set clients' homework between sessions. That can be to watch modules or videos of content. It can be applying techniques. It can be putting in place certain practices. And you can pretty much measure the amount of progress someone's making by the amount of commitment they have to doing the homework they've got. Does that mean the homework's always perfect? No. Does that mean everything works? No. But if people don't try things and put things into practice, you don't get the information of what's working and what isn't working. So the more proactive people are, I talk about becoming captain of the ship of your own recovery, and the more people really own the homework and the commitment and the following through, even if things don't go to plan, the more information then a practitioner has to work with at the next session. So as I say, this is not a comprehensive list. And in fact, I'd be curious if people want to share in the comments what you notice helps you get the most out of sessions. Perhaps practitioners might want to share the things that I may well have missed. But to summarize beforehand, make notes, write things down. If you want to summarize it in an email, most practitioners are happy with that. Manage your state, your timing, that you're not just coming straight out of something into a session. Listen, don't overly control the agenda, but also be brave enough and honest to speak up and to say what you need to share. Be willing to hear what's difficult to hear. Don't hold things back that might be important information. Another example of that, by the way, might be that you feel embarrassed that you haven't done the homework. And so you sort of fudge it and say, yeah, I've been doing it, but you haven't. And then the practitioner's a bit confused why things haven't progressed or why things are stuck. There is no judgment. There might be accountability, and you might be held to kind of see that that's not helpful behavior in a hopefully compassionate, loving way. But yeah, that information is important. And do your homework, follow through, put things into practice. Share your thoughts, share your comments. Tomorrow is Thoughtful Thursday, and I'm going to be talking about how to ask for help. This is sort of a follow-on from yesterday's Therapeutic Tuesday session, and I look forward to talking with you tomorrow.